Oh, yeah. Mr. Steve-O?
That is me.
Hey, Lieutenant Kellogg. Spoke with you on the phone one time.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm gonna grab my stuff. I'm gonna record. Is that okay?
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if you record me.
Okay.
Chiefs are not available this morning. The floods and everything else, they just couldn't meet. So I was just came to meet with you.
Okay. Well, I will take your time at this time, and then if we need to go farther and I don't feel like I get a satisfactory result with you, then I will reschedule to meet with the chief.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that fair enough?
Sounds good.
All right. Where do you want to go? We're just going to do it out here?
Yeah, sure. What's going on? I don't even know what's happening.
This is going to be a long conversation. So,
okay.
My opinion, conference room would be better if we have one available.
Sure, I don't care. Yeah, we have one.
Because I got some case law I want to break out to you, some criminal statutes, and all kinds of stuff. Which is going to be more than just bitching in the lobby. If that makes sense.
No, that's fine. No problem. What I would ask is that...
right?
what I would ask is that we just fill me in on the crux of the first, because if it's
essentially what I'm here for is to file a minimum of 4 criminal complaints against Hammond police officers. I'm not filing an internal investigations complaint. I'm filing criminal complaints. So now the bottom line is basically what my attorney told me to ask you is, are you going to honor your oath, or are you going to honor police department policy? And that's where we go from there. Because if you're going to honor policy versus your oath to the Constitution, then you can't help me.
Well, we like to, in any criminal investigation, we like to keep the evidence contained to, as few as people as possible. So you're saying you have criminal... I have 4 documented
incidences at a minimum of criminal complaints against the city of Hammond police officers.
Okay. Well...
and I'm not filing an internal investigations complaint. And 2 of those complaints come from obstruction of justice, where I tried to file the complaints and I was refused.
Okay.
So...
Well, there's two different ways here. If Hammond Police Department, we handle our own internal investigations, right, as you may know.
Okay.
So in that process is if you had something that you said we violated some kind of departmental policy, or the way you were spoken to, or the way you were treated, or something.
I have that as well, but I'm choosing to pursue legal action versus internal complaint action, because a slap on the wrist isn't going to do it. I'm repeatedly getting harassed. We've talked about this before, about incidences I've had with the police. Mm-hmm. I'm repeatedly getting harassed, and basically what it comes down to is it's First Amendment retaliation is what's happening to me. Because I practice my First Amendment right to record the police, I'm being retaliated against.
Okay.
And that is a crime.
Well,
it's not just a policy violation at that point. There's documented case law in the civil court or the Supreme Court that people have gotten settlements, and there's been things of this nature for retaliation against First Amendment protected activity. Okay. So that's, if you're prepared to hear this and you can act on that, I'm more than happy to share that with you. If you're not...
Well, we don't, that's the thing, that's what I was going to describe to you. If it's an internal complaint about, that we can handle departmentally with internal policies, then we take it. Then we can take it. We give you a internal complaint form. We fill that out. It goes to our internal affairs division, and they open an investigation in house, and that's how that's handled. Otherwise, if you have a criminal complaint, whatever that may be against officers, we don't handle our own. And the reason that we don't is for obvious reasons, right?
That's the same reason I'm not filing an internal complaint, is because and not to say that you guys are this way, but just in my experience with internal complaints is you could wipe your ass with them. They're useless, And I'm not to say that that's always the case. I know it depends on the circumstance, but I had encounters yesterday with 2 guys. I watched one cop, which was Lieutenant Turner, back down Kennedy from where the back gate of the post office is all the way down to the parking lot on the wrong side of the street. There's no way that's safe. No way that's safe.
Okay. Yeah.
I have video of it. everything I tell you, I have video of. So, you know, video doesn't lie, and that's why I record. Video does not lie.
Well, I would, if you want to press criminal charges, then because we don't handle our own, we can't even take our own reports. So I would have to refer you to the Lake County Sheriff's Department or the Indiana State Police.
Okay.
Either one of those two would have to take criminal charges. Obviously, we can't do criminal charges against our own. We could, but we choose not to.
Right. Well, the issue I have is I guess it's not an issue per se, but when I was trying to make the complaint Friday, dispatched refused to put me in touch with the county because Burdine told them that based off of not even speaking to me, nothing. Sergeant Burdine, I guess he talked to the other officers and stuff that I wanted to make the complaints against, and told dispatch that there was no crime committed, so they refused to do anything for me. And he made a legal assumption without speaking to me. And that's, while I got you here, one thing, I'm not gonna file an internal complaint, but one thing I am gonna complain about is the fact that twice I've come down here to complain when Burdine's been on duty. The first time he made me sit out there 2 hours and wait. The last time he told me to come down here, I sat out there for over an hour after being told if I wanted to speak to him to come down here, and then he finally informed dispatch that he refused to come out of the building and speak to me, which I feel is very unprofessional.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have knowledge of either one of
Okay.
those.
Well, the first one was they said they were doing shift change, blah blah blah. I let that go as a like happen of circumstance essentially. Yeah. That, you know, but the second time when you intentionally tell me to come down here and you know I'm here and then you refuse to come out of the building, that's not cool.
Yeah, I can't. Who knows? I can't.
Right.
I can't speak.
And I'm pretty sure on the night shift he's the man. Is that correct? He's like the supervisor.
If he's here, if he's here and it's his shift, he's the lieutenant.
Okay.
In charge, yeah.
Because I talked to Peterson earlier that night, and then he said he would get back with me again because I had more than one incident on Friday night. I had an incident. I came and talked to Sergeant Peterson. Then I had another incident with the police department. I called in. Peterson called me back and said they were doing briefing. He would get with me, and never did. And then I called back, and I'm guessing he was overruled by Burdine, and I was told that Peterson wasn't coming. Even though he gave me his word he would, and that if I wanted to go any farther, that I needed to come to the police station, which then I did, and then he refused to come out of the building. So that to me...
And in those situations from there, yeah, I don't know what happened that night, if they got busy, what it was. We're happy to deal with those today, if you do want to, you know.
I'm not going to file a complaint. I'm addressing them with you in the hopes that you would address them.
I'll follow through. And that happens quite often. A lot of people don't want to file the formal report. We just say, we'll take, you know, we'll look into it from here. So, and I will do that.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because you say you don't know what happened Friday night. You're not aware of what happened with me on Friday night or any of my calls or anything?
I don't.
Okay, so what would your department's policy be if somebody tries to flag down an officer or pulls up next to an officer and says, hey, I want to talk to you? Is it your department policy to make contact with that citizen or not?
Sure.
Is there a reason that you wouldn't? If a citizen pulls up next to a police car and says, I need to talk to you, is there any justifiable reason that, other than a lights and sirens call, is there any justifiable reason that a car would drive off and not make contact?
I don't know. It would all depend on what's happened in the situation. I don't know what's happening. If they're en route, like you said, if they're en route to a call, if they have a dangerous situation, if they have something they're responding to that needs immediate action.
If you encounter a cop sitting in a parking lot,
I have no idea. I can't.
I mean, if there's no call or no emergency, then as an officer, there would be no justifiable reason for them not to speak to me then, right? Regardless of the circumstance?
No, as long as they felt safe in doing so.
Okay.
Sure.
Because that's part of my issue is I tried to stop an officer and they rolled down their window, they smirked it, or I rolled down my window, they smirked at me and drove off.
Okay.
And like I told Peterson, and Peterson agreed with me, you know, and I have this on video, again, what I say, I document. You know, I told Peterson that the bottom line is I can punch you in the face today, you can arrest me, I could bond out of jail, and if my house is robbed tomorrow and you're called, it's your duty to come serve me.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Right. Well, what Peterson said is he basically felt that the officers knew who I was and profiled me essentially and made the decision to not give me service because of who I am, because they didn't want to interact with me. That was his assumption. Now, he didn't clarify that because he didn't speak to the officers, blah, 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 but that's the assumption. And my concern is on a policy standpoint or an internal standpoint is is it doesn't matter who I am. It should not matter who I am.
No, of course not.
And
it doesn't. And if that's the case, then we'd like to follow up and figure
right.
out.
Well, those two guys were whoever was in car K1 on Friday night at 10:30, 11 o'clock over in Hessville.
All right. Well, when we get done with our meeting here, if you want me to look into it, you're welcome to document it if you want to. If you don't want to,
I'm gonna trust. I mean, I got a video record. I'm gonna trust that you are gonna look into it. And then if you could get back to me, I'm sure they're gonna have some lame ass excuse. But I mean, the point is at this point, I mean, the criminal stuff, I'm gonna go. If I gotta go to Lake County or the state police, that's fine. But just between you and I, there's case law out there that stops your officers from retaliating against me. They shouldn't in the first place. But what they're doing is they're attempting to do legalized harassment. Anytime I stop and film the police, they're spotlighting my camera, which interferes with my First Amendment right. There's case law out there that says they can't do that. That's been to the Supreme Court. So
you're welcome to as long as you're within your legal the grounds to film. Of course, you're allowed to film.
Right.
So.
The example Friday night, which started everything, is they were the two K9 officers and another officer were at the med clinic just on the other side of 169th and Klein over in Gary there. They had a car stopped and were searching it. So when I came off the ramp, I saw it. I went down to Paul's Auto Yard in Gary there, spun around. I parked on the other side of the road and stayed on the other side of the road and just recorded. Didn't holler anything, didn't say a word, recorded. As soon as they're done with the spotlight on me and just shining it in my camera. And it happens over and over again. And there's case law against that. I think I told you not the last time, but the time before last when I came to file a complaint, I was followed from the police station, pulled over and wrote a traffic ticket. Like, cops sat out here and waited for me when I left and followed me. Every turn I made, he made and followed me. That's retaliation, because I said if he was a betting man, off the record, of course, that he would bet that, yeah, I was followed and retaliated against because of my activities. But, of course, legally or on the record on the video, he can't say that. But when I'm being followed from the police department and issued tickets when I come to complain against officers, or, as an example, I had encounters with officers yesterday, and they left before me, of course, and when I got to my block, the officer that I had the encounter with was on my street. Now, how do you go from Kennedy Avenue to my street over by Scott Middle School on randomness? No, he knew who I was and went over there. He was by my house. You can't say that stuff is circumstance. That randomly doesn't happen. There was no, I guarantee if you pull his call logs, there was no reason for him to be there other than he figured out who I was because I wouldn't identify myself, and everybody in this city can figure out who I am. I'm not inconspicuous, I'm 6'6" and 375 pounds. But how do you justify those? I know you can't justify them without looking into it. You're not going to issue a statement, and I understand that. But from my standpoint as a citizen, you have to look at that. Like, just because they encounter me doesn't mean they need to drive by my house. Just because they don't like me doesn't mean they can refuse me service. Like I told Peterson that night, I said I pulled up to that car and asked them to talk to them, and I said all I wanted to ask them was why they were spotlighting me, like what the problem was. Mm-hmm. And I said the reality of it is they don't know if I had just been robbed. Maybe I was waiting for them to finish with that traffic stop because I had been robbed. I was shot. I was in fear of my life. I was being chased. They don't know that, and I stopped them for service, and they drove away from me. So, what if I was in danger? What if I did need help?
Sure, absolutely.
And they just drove away from me because what? They don't like me because I'm Jeremy Siebold?
Well, we don't know those things too.
Right, I don't know why they drove away.
But we also don't know that if there's a problem that a citizen like yourself is having, we also don't know about it unless you tell us. It sounds like, sometimes you don't, maybe you're having trouble telling us that. So, but I think really a good time to do that too is, the afternoon shift and the midnight shift, they get extremely busy. Monday through Friday during the daytime, like you're coming in now, we're always here. So you'll always have people here that are usually, at least somebody around that can talk to you. Like I said, chiefs are busy. Obviously, there's a lot of flooding issues today.
Right, for sure. No, I know that. I know stuff's going on out there, and
Yeah.
and I understand and respect that. But
I
you know,
appreciate
I mean, the internal issues are like retaliation needs to stop. You know, I gave Peterson my YouTube channel. I have documented videos on there of Hammond police every time I encounter them, shining spotlights in my cameras. I've got, you know, them threatening me with disorderly conduct charges because I yell at them when I get frustrated, which you and I know or should know that, you know, I can tell a cop fuck off and it's covered under the First Amendment. So
the speeches, yeah.
Right. So trying to pull a disorderly conduct charge out of me telling a cop to fuck off or whatever, you know, yeah, they're going to arrest me, but all they're going to get on the end is a lawsuit, because if I'm not creating a scene and nobody's coming and it's just a conversation between me and you, there's really nothing you can do about it. You may not like it, but there's nothing legally you can do about it. So it seems every time I go out, or every time I'm out and I encounter the Hammond police, you know, just yesterday, I was out at the post office filming. Turner and I want to say it was Barrios maybe, but it could be somebody else, I don't know.
Yeah.
Came out. Turner was all right. He was okay. We got off to a rocky start when he hollered "yo" for my attention, and I turned around and told him "yo" is not an official command. And then, you know, he identified himself. We had a conversation. I explained to him what I'm doing. I explained to him where what I was doing was covered under the law, because he wasn't aware. You know, he didn't try to detain me or anything, but we had a cordial conversation. The other cop shined his light in my face, refused to identify himself. Actually, I told him he was under citizen's arrest at one point, and he laughed at me and walked away. You know? Now, I have just as much right to arrest him as he has to arrest me. But if I would have tried to do anything to him, I would have been arrested for assaulting an officer. And that's just the legalities of it.
We'll look into we'll look
you
into
know,
all those things. You said you have so there's a channel, you said?
Yeah.
So just, okay.
Indy Blue News. You can look me up. INDY Blue News.
Okay.
I gave it to Peterson. There's nothing to hide. The videos from Friday night I've taken down in fear of retaliation from the police department.
What was the Friday stuff?
The Friday stuff was when I stopped to record the K-9 unit, and then they spotlighted me. I went and talked to Peterson, had a real good conversation, and then when I went back to Hessville, which is where I live, they proceeded to follow me and spotlight me. I stopped at the gas station. They spotlighted me all the way into the door of the gas station. When I came out, they were waiting on me, parked in the parking lot. I was at the gas station across from Morton on 169th and Grand. They were parked in that little church parking lot behind, waiting on me. They would drive by, circle over to Save-A-Lot, all just to fuck with me. They got to have better things to do in Hessville. I know all the crime ain't solved in the city of Hammond. They got to have better things to do than follow me with their spotlight. So,
do you have that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have it on video.
Okay.
Yep, it's taken down right now on YouTube, but I do have the video. Okay. And that's what I tried to come.
Things like that. You're welcome to share with us.
Right. Well, that's part of my criminal complaint, because that falls. And I'm going to tell you this one, but that falls under harassment, which is 3545-2-2. Because the first line of the code, or for harassment, says if they follow me or whatever and attempt to make no contact with me, that falls under harassment. I mean, I can pull the statute exactly, but you know, basically, if they mess with me and don't make contact with me, that's harassment. That's a criminal charge.
Okay. Well,
and that's, not to cut you off, but that's what frustrates me is if, you know, I understand that I get aggravating because I'm out recording, but every officer I've encountered in the city of Hammond has a body camera. So what's the difference if my camera's on it or your camera's on it? But the flip side to that is also, if I were doing that to somebody else, you better bet they would investigate and do their due diligence on it. But because it's a cop happening to me, the answer routinely is, oh, it's an internal complaint, or, you know, we'll look into it, we'll do this, we'll do that. But the reality of it is it's a criminal matter. It's a criminal offense, you know. And then, in my opinion, and according to the attorney I've spoke to, me coming in to file a criminal offense with Burdine and him refusing to even meet with me or take that complaint is obstruction of justice, because he failed to meet his duty. Now, what he should have done is says, if Mr. Siebold, if you have a complaint, I need to refer you to Lake County, or I need to refer you to the state police. But he told the dispatchers, and I have it on video again, where dispatcher either 94 or 96 says that I was told there was no criminal offense committed, nobody's going to help you. So somebody made a legal determination or a legal assumption in the field without reviewing any evidence, which I'm guessing is not smart.
Well, that's what, you know, if you think there is criminal activity that took place, that's why it's best for, rather than people here involved, it's best to take it to
Right.
those other entities and do that, so. Okay. Well,
What would your assumption be as far as where to go? Would I be better, would you recommend going to the county police or starting with the state police? Like, what is normal procedure when this thing happens?
county.
Okay.
Yeah, county would generally be the first, the first step. Really, both entities take place, and we have either entity do separate investigations for us at any time. It just really depends on who's available at the time.
Okay.
But the county post, obviously, Crown Point's closer than Lowell.
Right.
So, and there'll be a lot of officers on station for counties.
Right. Because my fear is like,
shot, yeah.
you know, I left Burdine several messages, you know, and it frustrates me because my fear is, you know, I've never found a cop to admit it, but there is a blue line, you know, a hypothetical blue line. And for whatever reason, cops don't want to, you know, testify against other cops. They don't want to go against the grain. They don't want to go against the norm. And, you know, I heard somebody talk about it the other day. I was watching a video, and it basically said that cops get stuck in a position where they could know something's wrong, but if their superior tells them to do that, they're stuck between their job and supporting their family versus doing what's right. And again, I know you're not going to say, yes, there is a blue line, no, there's not, blah, 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 but there is that misconception sometimes where, you know, you go to the police for help, and especially if it's involving the police, you don't always get the help you deserve or the help that should be given to you, if that makes sense.
I mean, I can tell you that we work, you know, being the training coordinator here, we work every year and working on diversity classes and inclusion and transparency. We work on that all the time.
Right.
So if that is a problem, we definitely like input from the public,
right,
because we can always get better.
Well,
we try really hard, but we can always get better on all these
the
things.
biggest thing I would suggest is, you know, from what I see, is dealing with photography. I'm going to guess that there's not been a lot of material handed out on photography in the city of Hammond to the police department. Is that a fair statement?
No, we do. I mean, like yourselves?
Yeah, like photography is not a crime and covering the rules and regulations?
No, we cover.
Okay. Well, I talked to, and the reason I say that is I talked to Lieutenant Turner last night when I was at the post office, of course. And he was not aware, or said he had not read the 2010 DHS memo, which I think we referenced last time we talked. Are you aware of the 2010 DHS memo?
You'd have to clarify.
Okay. It essentially says that photography of any building, whether it's like state, federal, whatever, as long as you're on public property, i.e. like the sidewalk or whatever, or you're in an area that is accessible to the public, lobbies, corridors, for, you know, that it's legal.
Sure, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So he wasn't aware of that. So, I mean, he had heard of the 2010 DHS memo, but wasn't aware of its contents. Okay. So that's something I would suggest maybe getting out to the officers. You know, it's an easy, you can Google that, print it out, and drop it in a box.
We really tell every officer that if someone wants to film us, allow them to film us. It's the only time that they really take action is if for some reason they feel unsafe. Didn't you told me last time you carry a firearm?
Yeah, I quit doing that.
You quit doing it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's
the last couple times I've encountered the police.
Not good or bad either.
Right.
Either way, but if an officer can see that and doesn't have that threat anymore, it's a lot.
Right.
It's a lot better.
Right.
But like you said yourself, you being 6'6", 375, I'm 6'6" myself, so you know, 6'6", 375, it's still still a daunting, you know, person yourself. So
right. I
would just say, give the officers all considerations when you're dealing with them. If in case you would have a firearm, or in case they believe you might have a firearm, if they dealt with you in the past and you had a firearm,
right.
they might assume that you still have one.
Right.
Or just for your physique.
Right. I do still have one, but like I try to take that into consideration as an example. Friday night when I recorded the traffic stop, like, you know, they're here, I'm over here and down a little ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't get, you know, when I'm across the street and down the street, you can't really say I'm a threat. I mean, obviously, if I have a gun or whatever, a bullet will travel. But, you know, I even get spotlighting me to look at me. I understand that, you know. But
well,
for
it's
them,
not just a threat to themselves. There's a lot of things that we can do to keep ourselves. But
no, I understand
our
that.
job is to keep the public safe.
Right.
And if they feel for some reason that you are a threat to somebody else in the public, that is our.
But at some point, we have to draw the line of the fact that the police department knows who I am, knows what I do, and that I've never hurt anybody. So at some point, like I understand
that can't be the qualifier. I mean, people do it 100 times, and the 101st time they kill somebody.
I understand that, but at some point they have to balance. They have to use reality and ration when it comes to my civil rights. Doing the same behavior, you know, the definition of crazy is doing the same behavior over and over again and expecting different results. So when the results aren't changing and your cops are doing the same behavior, where do we draw the line at? So are we going to say that every time I'm out, if I'm walking down the street with my son, is it grounds for them to spotlight me and follow me all the way down the street just because I'm me? Like, where do we draw the line at?
Right. No. I mean, officers should interact with you if they have reasonable suspicion to
Right.
do so.
Which they're not, and they're just spotlighting me and following me around. And
well, like I said, any of those situations that you're saying are taking place, you're welcome to bring to our
okay.
attention.
Well, the initial video where I made contact and they spotlighted me over on 100.
If you have them, I'll be glad to.
I'm recording on the phone. If you want to write your email address down,
sure.
I can send you the links to them and clip them out. Get a pen.
Sure. I'll grab.
No, I got one. I was looking. Because I have that video. I have the video from yesterday where I was recording the cop car after the guy with Turner shined his light in my face. I had the DUI checkpoint video where I was out, and all I was simply doing was recording the DUI checkpoint and the traffic stops that were being made for people avoiding the checkpoint. So I got that where the cops pull up in the middle of the road and spotlight me, and then another cop pulls into the parking lot and does it, or stands there and just watches me. And the other issue I have too, which while we're here, which I voiced last time, is there seems to be a problem with contacting supervisors when you request them out in the field. And I don't know if it's just because me and they blow me off, but like at the DUI checkpoint I did that, I requested a supervisor multiple times and was refused. The answers always go to 509 Douglas. And again, it's like they're not even checking, because I understand if, you know, somebody's tied up, if something's going on, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I think it's becoming apparent to me that things I request or things that I would like to see done don't always get done. And what I mean by that is if every other police department I've ever dealt with in my life, if you request a supervisor comes. And it could be stupid. I've been on a traffic stop and it's not gone right. And I've requested a supervisor. And I may have to sit there for 20 minutes, but I'll get a supervisor. Hammond doesn't operate that way. And everybody I've talked to has been told, no, if you request a supervisor, if one is available, you will be, you know, they'll be dispatched to you. Right. And, you know, you can see clearly in the DUI checkpoint, the officer that's bright lighting me and another officer, we get into a verbal exchange, and that's where I was threatened with disorderly conduct and blah, blah, blah. But I told him multiple times that I wanted a supervisor, because all I was doing was walking down the sidewalk and filming the police. I don't engage the police until the police engage me, if that makes sense. I don't holler at them, I don't talk to them, I don't say a word to them until they start bright lighting me, until they come make contact with me. So I've learned that when I first started recording the police, I would walk up on a scene and flip them off and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it was just stupid. You know, it was aggravating to them, it was aggravating to me. So now, you know, like I said, the last couple of times I've encountered the police, I haven't taken my gun out. I don't make contact with them. You know, like I said, the incident Friday night, I was on the other side of the street and down the road a little ways, you know. So I'm trying to make it a point, I guess, to prove that what they're doing is retaliation for what I'm doing. Because if I'm not engaging them and I'm not doing anything to them, then there's no legal reason for them to come in contact with you. People walk down the road all day long. You know, people are on their cell phones all day long.
Yeah,
so,
I would just say, if the respect that you're requesting from the Hammond Police Department, which they are obligated to give you, I would just say your best bet will be to offer that same amount of respect to them. Once they get to the point where they're used to that you are a threat or aren't carrying that firearm, like you said, you're not carrying it anymore. That's good. Like I said, and even if you are carrying it, I imagine you're carrying it legally. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a gun permit.
And that's great, but the legal people kill people too.
Right.
So
yep. No,
there's
absolutely.
not too much officers that can do about that. If they feel that there's any threat to themselves or you or the public or anybody, they're going to act every time. They just that's our job, and there are plenty of people that we deal with on a regular basis that we'll see out on the street every single day.
Right.
So it's really not a personal thing. I just treat those officers with respect, and I'm sure you will get the same respect in return. And if you do not, then by all means come in, and if they say go to 509 Douglas, okay, that probably means they're busy. Especially if it's like you're talking about checkpoints and afternoons or midnight shifts. You know, I've been off the street for years, and it was busy a couple of years ago. I can't, and these guys and girls ladies are just slammed,
right,
constantly, and they probably just don't have a lot of time for meetings. If they know, they would just say, hey, please go to the police department.
Well, there would even be times, like I told dispatch on Friday night, that like if Peterson or Bourdain doesn't want to come meet me, that I would be happy with just a phone call. And every attempt I made, I mean, I sat outside the police station for over an hour waiting, and you know, that's not professional to tell somebody to come to the police station and then refuse to go outside. You know, the least he could have done is told me, come outside, and said, Mr. Siebold, I'm not talking to you, this is what you need to do. Because he knew, I made it very clear to the dispatch. I called in and left messages on the number that I was called from. It goes back, and I think it said patrol or something, or uniform division or whatever. There's a voicemail, and I left messages on there that told him I wanted to file criminal complaints. He knew exactly what I wanted to do. And if he's the shift commander or lieutenant in charge or whatever the case may be, he should know that if that's my intention, that he can't help me. And there was no reason other than just to be a pain in the ass that I can think of that he wouldn't say, Mr. Siebold, I can't help you. Go.
So you talked to him, or you left a voicemail?
No, I left multiple voicemails, but I was talking to dispatch who was talking to him. And dispatch, you know, would say, okay, Sergeant Bourdain said, come to the police station, or Sergeant Bourdain said, I'm not coming out.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
And I told dispatch multiple times that to relay the message and make sure he's informed that I want to file criminal charges, and if he fails to take my complaint, then I'm going to file obstruction charges against him. Because, you know, a crime is a crime, and it doesn't matter whether it's committed by you or me. You know, the difference is ideally if things happen with officers, they want to handle them internally, obviously. You don't want, you don't want the publicity and, you know, the things of that, because like the things I'm talking about are not major crimes. It's not like, you know, they're selling drugs and raping people and killing people, murdering people. But, you know, I guess the thing for me is that a crime is a crime. And if I were to commit obstruction or I were to commit harassment, I would be charged on it, potentially. You know, I would at least be investigated, at the very minimum least, if somebody made a complaint that said I was harassing somebody, or if there was something involved and I obstructed justice. I would be charged with that. You know, how many times do you see obstruction as an add-on charge with people? All the time.
We'll always, and county will do the same thing. They'll look at the evidence and see if there's evidence that the crime took place, and then they'll go forward the same way we would do. We would do
right.
The same thing.
And I understand that, but I mean that's just my thing. Is like, you know, I'll send you the email and I'll note.
Yeah, give me the links, because that's the best way to to check out and see
Right.
what it is. And if we can see that kind of behavior taking place, then we can meet with the officers and ask for an explanation on their side and see what's happening.
Right.
We all want the same thing. We want
Right.
you to have your free speech and be able to do, to film if that's what you want to do. But we want the officers to be able to do that and the public to be able to do that in a safe environment where everyone feels safe and the officers are allowed to not have to take away from the job that they're trying to accomplish. Whether that is a DUI checkpoint, or whether that is a domestic that someone calls, or a situation where somebody calls, for help. If we get a man with a gun call walking down the street, and our officers are coming in there responding to that actual threat, and he's walking towards a school or something, as we know is a horrible problem in the United States right now.
Right.
It's, to have someone on the side of the road as yourself, also with a firearm at one
potentially,
point,
absolutely,
potentially have a firearm and filming, is now they have to go, oh wait, is this our guy? And not all our officers will know you. This is the first time I've seen you. Although we had a conversation on the phone.
We've had a conversation, but same with Turner. Turner's like, I've heard your name, I know who you are, but I've never met you, so I don't know you personally.
So they have to go here and do that and deal with with you, and then go, oh, and while this guy gets closer to the school. So there are just a lot of circumstances that that are taken in, and the best way to get the most professional, is to not be film and try to do it from a distance. And if you do have a request and you need something, by all means, then approach the officers. But try to let them get as much of their job done, because they're really slammed and really busy out there.
Okay.
And as you know, it's a dangerous world out there for
I know
everyone,
Hammond is not the safest city to live in. It's just the reality of life. We're crunched up between Chicago, East Chicago, and Gary, and those cities are bad and filter into what we have. Not to say that there's not bad people in Hammond, but I think we get a lot of thoroughfare and cross through traffic.
Imported crime.
Based on that type of stuff. But I'll send you the links to the videos I'm talking about. I'm going to send you also. I'm going to quote the case, the retaliation case, which I was talking about, is out of Indiana. Happened in Indianapolis, where gentleman sued the Indianapolis police for essentially retaliating against him for his First Amendment rights, and the guy got a $200,000 settlement.
Yeah, I'd love to read it.
I don't want to sue the city of Hammond, because ultimately it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hurt the chief, it hurts the taxpayers. If I were to sue you guys and by chance win, it doesn't hurt the police department, it hurts the taxpayers of the city of Hammond is who it hurts. And that's not my ultimate goal. My goal is I want to practice my hobby. I want to do what I do. I actually just signed on with a news organization out of California, where I am an official journalist for them. Essentially, I'm going to be on staff for them and covering matters of public interest in our area. They have about 20 correspondents nationwide, different areas, and they try to hit the big metropolitan areas. So like for me, it's Chicago. Obviously I'll do stuff here, but they're going to want me to cover more of Chicagoland, things like that. But I mean, there's tons of case law out there, and I understand that cops aren't going to know every law. It's impossible, because you have city code, you have state, county, whatever. I don't know if county has codes, but state, federal law, blah blah blah. So it's impossible to know everything, but
it's always at our fingertips. That's what we always say. The information's always right there. Right. If we don't know it, we'll find out.
So I guess coming out of here, I'm going to send you the links, and I'll kind of address the issues that we discussed in an email to you, as opposed to doing a formal complaint. I'm not going to fill out the form.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I'll give us something to follow up on.
And then, I'll follow up with county. But the two things I guess I would pull out of this would be, make sure you guys have the DHS memo, or at least access to it, notify them of it. I know there's been 2 memos put out about me in this police department, at least 2. So a memo can be put out with the DHS memo. I mean, it's 2 pages, you just print, there's 200 officers or whatever here, 250 officers, so 500 pieces of paper should not, I could drop off a ream of paper if that's what it costs. And then the second one is based on what I did yesterday. Look up poster 7 for the United States Postal Service, because I was at the post office recording yesterday, and not only does the DHS memo allow me to do what I do, Poster 7 for the post office has a tidbit in there like rules and regulations and policies of the post office that allows me to do what I'm doing. And where I guess the disconnect comes from is, you know, if you look up on YouTube First Amendment audits, you will see these all over the place. There are people in California, Texas, you know, all over the country. And, you know, there's a saying that people who do what I do say, and they say, bad officers are the ones that get good officers hurt. And what I mean by that, and what is meant by that, is the cops that are out there that aren't educated and that aren't, it's not necessarily bad as in, you know, selling drugs, killing, raping people, but officers that go out and aren't informed or aren't educated or have attitudes or whatever are the reason that people get a bad taste in their mouth for cops, and then things happen down the road. Because you may piss me off, but it may not be you that gets the action that comes back. And I'm not saying I'm going to do anything, but you understand what I'm saying, sure. Just in general. You know, so like I believe that I can, and I don't want to like, you know, teach a class, blah, 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 but I believe in meeting with you guys that I can help with some of the education as far as keeping things up to date with the Hammond Police Department, at least as photography goes, because, you know, the post office is obviously federal, but when I was on the sidewalk yesterday, I encountered 2 officers, and, you know, Turner wanted to ID me, and I said no, and he goes, so you're failing to ID? And I said yes, and he goes, so that's what we're going to go with today? And I said, yeah, that's what we're going to go with today. Well, if there's no crime, he has no reason to ID me. Now, I understand he can ask, but sure. Most cops, which he didn't do, and I think it's probably because he was a lieutenant, but most cops will then try to hem you up on that. You know, one of the comments I made to him and the other cop yesterday was continue to fish. And a lot of cops go on fishing expeditions. You throw out questions, you throw out this, you throw out that, hoping for an answer, and then you take that information to process it for whatever you may need.
So yesterday you were filming at the post office?
Yep.
And the officers stopped it?
They got called because
they got called.
Yeah, the post office, the ladies on the dock and that were bringing the trucks in, you know, of course said I don't have the right to photograph them in public.
So the post office employees were there and
yep.
They felt
they didn't want me to photograph
suspicious
them.
Or,
yep. They called me in as a suspicious male, generic call.
And then you see, you know, and that's the point when our officers, you know, arrive, is they get a call. They have no idea that it's you.
Well,
and
when I
just, you know, if you're there and you're doing those activities more, you're probably going to get called on more often. So I can see that the officers will encounter you more because you're in those environments that you get called on more. And we just, I mean, I'm sure you know, we've had post office bombing. I
filmed it. I didn't film the bombing, but I responded afterwards, and I have footage of that up. Yeah, I responded just like
a dangerous situation.
ABC 7 and everybody else did.
Our targets,
right?
You know, and people, you know, so it's a tough.
Well, the goal that I would like to achieve out of it, like Turner asked me, you know, what was my goal in filming the post office? Because he's like, I'm sure you're not interested in filming old postal trucks, and I'm like, no, but the goal is education. Now, it didn't happen yesterday, but if I go film the post office today and they call again, my goal is for you guys to have the knowledge about Poster 7, which they should already have the knowledge because that poster should be hanging on their wall in their lobby. It's supposed to be in every post office. And if not, just like you guys have rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, they should be trained on theirs, just like you guys should be trained on theirs. So if they don't know that Poster 7 is there, then you guys, even though you don't technically have jurisdiction at the post office because it's federal property, I mean, I'm on the sidewalk, that's your guys' jurisdiction, but then you guys should be able to go to the postal employees and say, look, everything he's doing is constitutionally protected activity. He's not committing a crime, everything he's doing is legal. And the goal...
And that does get disseminated back. When anybody calls, even if they don't go in and talk, they get in the car and they'll say, okay, give the post office a call, let them know that we checked him out, everything that he's doing is legal activity,
right?
And they'll say, okay.
But I guess my fear is that they're not sending that back, that it's just that, okay, it's Jeremy Siebel and it's clear that the post office isn't getting the information back that it's legal activity. There's nothing criminal about what I'm doing, although they may not like it, they may consider it rude. The bottom line is this is not criminal. So my goal is like, You know, like Turner came out yesterday, asked me for ID. We went through the blah, blah, blah. I told him I wasn't ID, and I told him if he really wanted to know who I was to figure it out, it's not that difficult. Within about 2 minutes, he knew who I was. You know, I don't know if he thought he was sly because he kind of smirked and he's like, have a good night, Jeremy. Like he did some big secret undercover work by figuring out who I was. But, you know, that's my goal is like they come out, you know, look and see it's me and drive away. You know, not to say that they won't make contact, but, you know, to stop and ask me for ID, you know, to, you know, be like, I think he was trying to use, and again, this video is online. It's going to be one of the ones I send you with Turner. He's like, well, that's going to be what we're going to go with today because I failed the ID. Like he was trying to get me to, or it seemed like to me that he was trying to insinuate or be like, well, if you fail to ID, that's a criminal charge. Well, under certain circumstances, it is. But walking down the street and saying, hey, can I have your ID? That's not grounds for a criminal charge. I have just as much right to say yes as I do no. I don't have to give him. You know, when there's no crime and he can't articulate a crime or reasonable suspicion or probable cause.
But then he didn't write. You were detained.
No.
So it is working. We give our officers the information,
right.
Myself included. I go to training. We learn this. We share it.
So
it sounds like it worked.
It worked fairly well. My concern would have been is what if I wouldn't have acknowledged him? What if I would have just said, no, I'm not talking to you? You know, then what? Which I didn't do. I gave him a little bit of a courtesy of stopping and saying, at least I'm not going to tell you who I am,
sure.
You know, and we did the little back and forth, and then I asked him if I was being detained. He paused for about 4 or 5 seconds and said no.
We work on that,
you know,
as well. If it's consensual, if you're trying to make a consensual encounter with the person, and the person refuses, and we don't have any reasonable suspicion to stop them, we just let them go. We work on that all the time.
Right.
Our officers are well informed of that.
I mean, and I'm going to tell you, the next time I encounter an officer like that, I'm going to probably remain totally silent, and I'm gonna test it to see, you know, like you say, you work on these things. Well, if I'm just a suspicious male and there's no crime, you know, taking pictures obviously is what I do. If that gets called in as suspicion, like I told Turner yesterday, I have no obligation to help him with his investigation. You know, he questioned me, tried to ask me what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't answer him. And I flat out told him, I have no obligation to help you. Zero. When you come to interview me, if you get a call about a suspicious person, I have no obligation to tell you who I am. I have no obligation to tell you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, where I'm going, where I'm coming from. You know, which is what I say about fishing. Cops fish for information. You want to know what I'm doing, where I'm going, where I'm coming from, you know, blah, blah, blah. Which I understand is a process to determine things.
Sure.
But I have no obligation to give you any of that information. You know, I told him I have the right to remain silent. I plead the fifth. And that's where we stood. You know, now obviously he called in and, you know, big dude taking pictures at the post office. 99% chance it's probably me. I'm guessing you don't get too many other calls about people taking pictures at the post office and stuff in the city of Hammond. You know, so I'm making a fair assumption. I haven't seen anybody else out.
And assume, oh, that's just this. That's
right.
That.
No, and
they don't stop and talk to you, and then they drive away and go, oh, that's Jeremy, and they just drive away without checking you. Maybe they've dealt with you before, and then you walk in and you shoot up the post office. You know, how do we do our job?
Right.
So
and no, I understand
they're
that.
always going to keep coming in contact with you, and
I understand that.
And you might not, you don't feel like every time every officer has dealt accordingly, but they do their best with the information that they have at the time. You never know what the post office has told them.
Right.
You know, you might not know. Maybe they said, hey, there's something,
right.
small black something in his hand or whatever. I think it could be a gun. They just don't know.
No, and there's videos about that. Like I said, the organization I belong to has thousands of thousands of videos out there. One of our correspondents yesterday was arrested in Texas for walking down the road with an AR-15. Totally legal in what he was doing, but because of the school shooting in Florida and things like that, he was actually arrested last night. Now there's going to be a lawsuit out of it, blah blah blah, because the sole reason he was stopped was for carrying a gun, which is legal activity. So there's different circumstances, and I understand that, but I mean, I guess the issue is just the professionalism. Like, once the stop was done, I was recording the cop cars, and the one guy, I swore his name was Barrios, but I'm gonna send you the video anyways. But I'm standing there like this with my camera, and he shoots the light off the side of the car that's on the flashing beam bars. There's no reason for him to do that. None whatsoever. You cannot justify a reason. Stop's done. Turner's backing up 80 feet down the wrong way on the wrong side of the road down Kennedy. And I'm just standing there watching this cop car. It's a, an SUV, one of the blue SUVs. And he just flips his light on in my face.
That's tough to say. I don't know.
You know what I mean?
The lights, the light bars anymore, if he's got his back flashers on.
He had no lights on, period.
To go, or maybe he thinks he's turning them on or off or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it could be something as
it genuinely could be a simple mistake, but
pressed the button by accident. Who knows?
But my thing is he did it when I started recording, and then he turned it off, and you'll see that in the video.
And yeah, if you have that you say that there's activity that's happening that shouldn't be, especially with the spotlighting and all that kind of stuff, make sure you send me those links, and then I'll have that, and then that'll help me.
Right.
Look at it.
Because like you said, you're at a point right now where, essentially it's just my word, because they're not coming in and going, hey, I ran into Seabolt and I spotlighted him last night. The other issue I have too, which I'm sure is an issue, but I'm not going to press it at this point, is there's an officer on the force, and I'm not going to give his name. But anytime I have any interactions with the police department, he goes and tells somebody outside of the police department who happens to be a friend of my wife, and that person is relaying that information to my wife. So I'm guessing, while that's not necessarily illegal, it's definitely not professional to go, hey, because he called in, I got a new SUV. And on Friday when I was interacting with the cops, before I got home, my wife knew that I had encountered the police. Because this officer, I'm assuming he works nights. I don't know exactly what shift he works, but based on the fact that it happened at night, and my wife knew before the fact that I got home, this officer had called my wife's friend and said, oh, Jeremy was stopped in his Ford Escape. You guys got a new SUV, huh? I'm guessing that that's not normal procedure, that you guys shouldn't go home and gossip about people that you encounter at work. I'm guessing that's probably a policy issue more than a crime.
Yeah, it's not something that's necessarily covered. It really depends on what the nature of the circumstances.
Right, but I just mean every time I run into the police, like, if I'm out at the checkpoint, it's like, oh, Jeremy was out at the checkpoint again, and that information is relayed to my wife's friend, who then tells my wife, who then tells me, and, it's just, to me, it's not professional. I don't care, but it's just another instance of, in my opinion, like the Hammond Police Department not being professional and retaliating against me and doing those things, because what reason does an officer have to go tell a friend that I was pulled over? Like my name specifically, what reason is there to say that? There's not, You don't go home and go to your neighbor and go, hey, I stopped Jim from down the street yesterday because he, didn't use his turn signal. Right. You don't do that. That's just not professional. And like I said, I'm going to leave that out of it at this time because I don't want to start a problem between my wife and her friend. Mm-hmm. But, maybe something as far as training goes that you could touch on as far as, being professional. And, I understand if you have a bad day at work, you're going to go home and maybe vent to your spouse or whatever. But, when I worked as an EMT, I would go home and vent to my spouse, but I didn't specifically say I picked up Mary Lou and did this. You might say, oh, I went on a shooting call today and somebody was shot, but you don't give details or names or, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Or at least I'm assuming you don't, as a, as a professional courtesy that you guys don't do those things. So,
well, yeah, send me those links. Contact county, and we'll go from there. Anytime you want to file, like you do have a complaint, you're welcome to come in. I would suggest that it is best to come during the daytime like this because we're a lot more available.
Well, a lot of the times I'm out in the evening, and that's when issues happen to me.
Yeah. Well, we can always address it like this. We can always address it.
Right. Well, that's what ended up happening actually is Monday was President's Day. Nobody was in. I don't know if you were here, but I called the Chief's Office Administration and nobody picked up the phone. So I left a message and then I didn't get a call back. So I called. Were you the one that called me this morning or no?
No.
Okay. Somebody called me from here this morning, but they didn't leave a message. I was wondering if it was you since we ended up meeting. Just
I'll
to say,
wait to let you know about the Chiefs. Yeah.
Right.
I'll try to get you if you were.
So, I mean, I guess that's just where I stand is, poster 7 when it comes to federal properties, which I know you guys don't deal with exclusively, but you know, same would be if I go down here to the courthouse. That's a federal building.
Yeah.
And if I'm out on the sidewalk, that's your guys' jurisdiction. If I step foot onto the property, then it's a federal issue. So maybe just
I'll look into both of them.
You know, read that, and I'll note those again in the email, so you have them to reference. But it's just
You got it, Mr. Seabolt.
you know, I just want to be able to practice my rights, which you guys swear to uphold, and not be harassed.
Well,
So,
any other things? Let us know if you feel like you need to. If I didn't handle what you're looking for today, if you need to.
no, I'm gonna trust that you will. I'm gonna send you an email, you know, in a little bit, and then
Yeah, please do.
if you would just follow up with me once you know, look into it and make a decision.
You got it.
Fair enough.
All right, you got it.
Thanks, sir.
Be safe.
Take
All
care.
right, take care.
So guys, I did not read any of your comments. I'm gonna scroll through them once I get out here. Where's Waldo live? I know, right? I'm gonna go scroll through your comments once I get out to my vehicle, guys. We got a lot of rain and snow melting. We got like 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow. So chiefs are out dealing with flooding, which is probably code word for sitting in the office and we don't want to talk to you, but you know. Turn the old seat warmer on and the escape. Let's see. Holy moly, we got comments for days. Same shit, different person, yep. Smash the like button. Yeah, give me some subscribers, guys. I'm trying to hit 1,000. That cop was Lieutenant Steve Kellogg, Cypher Sky, or Zephyr Sky, whatever. Yep. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna read these. I get that it's just a PR move, and you know. Terre Haute's about 2 hours straight down Route 41 for that person. Yeah, just because I give have a gun and carry it, you know, they're using that as an excuse. Body language, don't lie. I'd love to audit. I've been to Gary. I actually had 0 contact in Eastland. I had some city workers out in the parking lot cleaning up, telling me I couldn't be there. I couldn't record them without permission, but I never had any contact with the police. I took my gun and audited the Gary Police Department and had no contact. But I'm going to copy the email. I'm going to do a video on it and send it out. I'm glad you guys stayed with me for an hour. I'm catching up. I think I'm at 9:40 on the comments. Yes, there's been 2 memos put out about me that they've told me about. I just saw the memos comment. Nobody will officially give them to me. But I've had more than one officer tell me that there's been memos put out about me, but anytime I ask about them, they deny it. And I've done a records request too, and I've been told they don't exist. Aaron V. Cox, appreciate the watching. Free Texas sheepdog, amen. Yeah, this Charger just smacked the curb. Just got back up. The only thing I had in my hand was my Android cell phone, which you're not going to be able to see it in a reflection. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. I got a Samsung Note 5. That's what I was recording with yesterday. That's what was in my hand. So if that gets mistaken for a gun, you know. I talk too much. I absolutely do. But I get frustrated, and I feel like the only way... the only way I feel like I get anywhere is if I keep talking to them. So I'm gonna end this stream, guys, and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna shoot out this email and we'll go from there. Yeah, it's just like I get frustrated and I keep trying to explain it over and 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 over again, and it's like, come on, you know. But I get it, you know. You say too much and it's like whatever. But I mean, it is what it is, you know. I've got documented incidences of, you know, crimes being committed. So anybody that will subscribe and, you know, share content, appreciate it. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this week. So any help I can get getting there, you know. I hope you guys enjoy the videos. The incident Friday night I took down for a reason. It will be back up clipped at some point because I got to edit out some stuff of it. But I'm not going to say who, what, when, where, or why. So that's where we're at. It's like, you know, you got to try to keep on your toes. You got to try to remember what you want to say and what you want to do, and so forth and so on. So, but yeah, we'll see. But alright, guys, I'm gonna end this live stream and I'm gonna drive home. So adios.